Hello everyone, let's talk about how do most Chinese think about the re-election of President Trump, and also how most likely China will be preparing for the second term of President Trump. Okay, the first, most Chinese, I'm talking about educated Chinese, I'm talking about the Chinese who are reasonably informed about the US situation, are not particularly surprised by the re-election of Trump. Okay, why? Because to some extent Trump relates to the Chinese situation of 1977 and 78, when Chinese politics made a big turn, when at the end of the Cultural Revolution, the so-called Gang of Four were brought down, and Deng Xiaoping gradually came back. And why do I say that? Because to some extent, to those many educated Chinese, many of the elite Democrats in the US have been talking about, frankly speaking, in the language of the Gang of Four in China. That is, they are very ideologically charged. The famous line of the Gang of Four is that they rather want a wheat of a socialist wheat than a capitalist crop. Okay, so they want political correctness to be the first principle. Meanwhile, Deng Xiaoping, who gradually came back after the death of Mao, put China back in the right direction by emphasizing three things. Okay, this to some extent reminds people in China of what's going on in the US. Number one, Deng Xiaoping said, let us focus on what's going on in the country. Let us do not bother too much about international affairs. Okay. Number two, let's put economic work as job number one. Okay. Without economic development, all other things cannot be talked about. Okay. Number three, Deng Xiaoping said, let's do our homework first. Okay, homework is most important relative to all other international issues. Of course, this little bit goes back to the first point, that Chinese homework is number one. China accounts for 20% of the world's population. If we are able to keep our house in good order, we are making a contribution to the rest of the world. So to some extent, okay, President Trump's agenda reminds us what went on in China 40, 50 years ago. Okay, so that's the reaction of many Chinese. I know that Trump can be very repulsive in his personality and in his rhetorics. Okay, but in China, we have been telling people Trump is like smelling tofu. Or in the English word, okay, it's like blue cheese. It smells very bad, but actually if you taste it, not too bad. Some people like it. So that people who voted for Trump do not want to openly publicize, saying, I voted for Trump. Okay, people feel a little bit ashamed for the fact they voted for Trump. Okay, so that's the overall reaction of many people in China. Then the question is how China is preparing for the second term of Trump. Okay, let me tell you this. Okay, the most troublesome, the most unpleasant aspect of Trump's re-election is not his policy. Okay, his policies are pretty much well anticipated in China. What is most repulsive and very irritating is Trump's nomination of those extreme politicians in key positions in his cabinet. For example, the Secretary of State. Okay, he chose an ultra anti-China person. Okay, so to us, to many Chinese, this is frankly speaking, this is against Trump's doctrine. Okay, Trump thinks that we want to be focused on domestic issues. We do not want to put ideology as job number one. We want to put the economy, real interest of the US as job number one. Okay, however, his choice of many key members in the cabinet actually put ideology at the front. Okay, in a way, let me explain to you. People like Marco Rubio are actually, I call them institutional revolution faction. Rather, they are bending on changing Chinese political regime. They are regime changers. They are aiming at changing Chinese political regime, which is totally unacceptable from top policymakers' perspective in China. So much so that China is not ready to work with people like Marco Rubio. Okay, China will be very much irritated by his approach. Okay, so that I am worried, and I'm also prepared for initially, at least initially, a big drop, a big downturn of the relationship, the U.S.-China, China-U.S. relationship. Okay, as a consequence, Chinese investment in the U.S. and the U.S. investment in China will suffer. As a consequence, Chinese export to the U.S. will suffer drastically. Vice versa, U.S. Export to China will also suffer. Okay, so I think China is prepared for a big economic headwind. Therefore, I believe in the coming month, China will have to push out a drastic plan, a huge plan to boost domestic consumption, to boost consumers' consumption, to boost local governments' actual purchasing power by issuing more debt to swap out local debt. Okay, so in a way, the second term of Trump actually is pushing China to do a lot of reforms in the right direction. It's speeding up the reform process in China. So let's watch, let's see what will happen in early January when Trump comes back to the White House. Okay, this is an interesting drama. Let's see. Okay, I think I cannot help but anticipating the changes in the coming month.